Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And in this week's episode, I want to explore one of the first big insights I had into how human beings work that was kind of a shock to the system because it was so unlike how I had been taught human beings work and life works. And it's to do with the relationship between happiness and success. And traditionally, what I learned was if you want to be happy, you need to be successful. And so the more you get what you want, the more skilled you get at getting and having what you want, the happier you'll be. And the less good you are at that, the less happy you'll be. And while there were exceptions and there were caveats to do with morality and values and circumstances, as a general rule of thumb, without anyone ever necessarily formally telling me that, all the messaging in my world was reinforcing the idea that the better I did, the happier I would be. Now, the problem was, it really didn't play out that way. I would do very well at certain things, but the experience of doing them was so miserable that what it took to be successful actually made me pretty damn unhappy. And I would look at people who, in the eyes of the world, seemed very successful, and a lot of them were kind of assholes. They just weren't happy people. They weren't people. They were nothing that I aspired to. And so I was confused until I started paying attention to people that seemed to me to be happily successful. And I could find them. I could find people who not only had cool things in the world, they seemed to genuinely enjoy their life. And I wanted to take a fresh look at, well, what's the connection? Does it work the way that I thought it worked? And it became very apparent to me that it didn't. That people who were happily successful were almost inevitably happy before they were successful. And I read many things and I studied many things. And one of the things that stuck with me in all my explorations about the happiness-success connection was a dialogue between two characters in the book Second Chance, which is a sort of a spiritual novel by a mystic named Sid Banks. And this is I think it's the end of the first chapter. The two main characters, Jonathan, who's sort of the guru character, and Richard, who's the explorer, are meeting and talking, and Richard is kind of getting to know Jonathan, and they're sitting watching the sunset in Hawaii, and this Richard is the narrator, and he says, "We sat in silence for a while. Then I inquired, 'What is your idea of success?' Jonathan looked out to sea as if he were pondering. 'Simple,' he said. 'Happiness and contentment.' 'Is that all?' I inquired. 'Just happiness and contentment?' 'Yes,' he replied. 'Don't you think that's enough?' Now, what I noticed was that for me, happiness and contentment are kind of what we're all looking for in life. But that doesn't mean that when we're happy and content, we don't want anything anymore. Actually, the best I can tell how it works is that when we're unhappy, we want whatever we think will make us happy. When we're happy, we just kind of want whatever we happen to want. And it turns out that happiness and contentment are built in. In other words, you were born happy. We're all born happy. Babies don't need therapy. We learn a lot of things along the way that can mess us up. But happiness and contentment are there long before we have anything that the world would call success. And since happiness and contentment are our birthright, though if you look at a baby, you might not say happy, you might say, wow, look how alive they are. Oh my God, they're just living in bliss. Oh my God, they're so delighted by the fact they have toes. Like those might be more accurate descriptions of that state that we're born into in when we come into form. The happiness success connection is just a noticing about how differently life unfolds when we live from our happiness and contentment, as opposed to in order to experience more happiness and contentment. And the way I wrote it in my first book, You Can Have What You Want, is happiness leads to success a heck of a lot more often than success leads to happiness. Or if we want to kind of incorporate Sid Banks's definition of happiness, his definition of success as simply being happiness and contentment, we could say happiness leads to success in the world of form a heck of a lot more often than success in the world of form leads to happiness. Well, if you want to kind of experience more of this for yourself, notice anytime there's something that you want, something, a goal that you have, something you're going after, notice if you inadvertently delay your happiness, delay your good feeling until you see how it works out. A really common variant on this that I see is people who have been like fighting really hard to make ends meet, and then they get a paycheck, but even the way the paycheck came is a little, and they'll go, look, I'll relax when the check clears. Well, that's a great example of how we think our well-being is dependent on something happening in the world outside of us. But the inside-out understanding, in a nutshell, is that we're living in the feeling of thinking, not the feeling of circumstances. We're living in the feeling of our own thought-created reality, not some feeling that exists outside us and somehow is transmitted to us. You know, I remember somebody once saying, well, that sounds like magical thinking. And I went, really? Because the idea that money could make you happy or sad seems far more magical to me. And they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, show me. Show me how a number on a piece of paper can make you feel something. Show me how a piece of colored paper with numbers on it can make you feel something. That sounds like magic. And the way it actually works, as best I can tell, is that we project our feeling onto objects. And then we kind of look at it as if the object is creating the feeling. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I'm a teddy bear guy, and she had a teddy bear. And I could see she was getting a little nervous because she grabbed onto her teddy bear, and I grabbed my teddy bear, and we started talking about teddy bears. And I said, isn't it interesting that you and I both know that this is a piece of fabric with stuffing in it? And yet both of us have projected so much of our love and good feeling onto it that when we look at it, it feels like it's bringing us love and comfort. And that just seems to be the way the world works. We live in feelings, project those feelings onto objects, and then act as if the object is creating the feeling. But that's 180 degrees opposite to how it actually works. So if you want to really explore this happiness, success connection for yourself, it's kind of one of the best experiments that I could possibly offer you. And here it is. Be happy. In other words, rest in the nicest feelings you have inside you, irrespective of anything that's going on in the world or anything you think you should be doing, or just let yourself feel good, no matter what. And then notice what you still want to create in the world, and go do that and see what happens. And if this is the kind of thing that's exciting for you, I really encourage you to check out a program that will be running starting in January called Your Life, Your Way. And you can learn more about it at michaelneill.org. Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk with you soon.